California was never a slave state, but that doesn't stop San Francisco and their reparations committee because they want to pay each long-term black resident $5 million and forgive their entire debt for decades of systemic repression. Hello, my name is Kyle and welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about this. You can't mix this stuff up. You really can't. This guy here really believes that you can give people $5 million in a lump sum and still have the audacity to say that's not enough when it comes from decades of repressive, whatever they want to call it. San Francisco officials say that $5 million in reparations and total debt forgiveness for longtime black residents is not enough. And before I get into this article, because obviously this is utterly ridiculous on so many different levels, let's just step back and think about this. How many of you have $5 million right now liquid in the bank? I'm not talking about investments or retirement plans. I'm not talking about equity in your house, nothing like that. I'm talking about $5 million in hard, cold cash, either in a money market or a bank account right now.
That would be no.
I dare say many of us do not have that. For one thing, it's not that smart because you can do other things with the money. However, but if you do have it, you're probably in the minority. Just like this guy in the minority. And he's trying to speak for minorities, and he's going to cost minorities way much more. And I will dare say this, before I even get into this, let me do a quick commentary. So you're going to give people $5 million in hardcore cash. It's going to be an estimate on the taxpayer of $560 billion. You're going to cost the taxpayers of San Francisco. How much money is that going to cost the long run from everybody in terms of inflation, in terms of a lot of different things, in terms of social impact? And not only that, how long will that $5 million last these people? Now, I'm not saying they're irresponsible, but you know how it is when lottery winners, more often than not, they win the Mega Million and that sort of thing. And guess what? Within 3 years, they are broke, or worse off, they're more in debt than they were before they bought that lottery ticket. I suspect that that money that's going to get spent is going to go right back into the hands of the greedy capitalist, because these people don't know how to spend their money. It's going to go into liquor. It's going to go into, I know I'm stereotyping here, but it's going to go into things that are not beneficial to the individual in terms of long-term sustainable health financially, period. Otherwise, they will not be there where they are. I can say that because there have been people who have lost all their money, who have been self-made millionaires prior. And guess what? They're now millionaires again because they used the same habits that got them the money in the first place. All right, enough of that. Let's get into this article. While neither San Francisco nor California formally adopted the institution of chattel slavery, the tenets of segregation, white supremacy, and systemic repression and exclusion of black people were codified through legal and extra-legal actions, social codes, and judicial enforcement. So this comes from this draft here. This is from the San Francisco reparations plan. I read through this thing. It's absolutely ridiculous. It goes into, let me go to page 29 here and show you guys. If I come at page 29, I went through this a little bit before. It's pretty extensive. Let me go 29 and see where we are. Where are we? All right, here we go. So here we go. Here's what you have to do to be eligible. You have to be an individual who has identified as Black African American on public documents for at least 10 years. Identified. Okay, so I guess the 10 years is the key thing there, because I could identify as as a Himalayan, but I guess they're saying you have to do it for 10 years. So whatever. And 18 years old. And you must check box one of these two criteria. It's just, from a member of a historically marginalized group from 37 to 68 in San Francisco, or displaced direct descendant of someone displaced from San Francisco by urban renewal between 54 and 73. So it goes back to these various issues. You have to consider that each person, no matter where you are in life, benefited from something before, and you're also part of a group of people before you that suffered, that were probably treated unfairly. And that can go to anybody. So essentially what they're saying is, this opens the door potentially for anyone to say, hey, you know what? My great-great-great-great-grandfather suffered because he was going down the street and someone, swindled him out of his land because of a fencing ordeal, and he took him to court and sued him, and it was falsely accused, and next thing you know, he lost all of his self-worth back then, and now my family has suffered for the past 100 years. It's the same thing that anybody could do, because every person in this country has suffered at some point in time in terms of a legacy, family, historical perspective. You follow what I'm saying? So if you watch the film or the miniseries 1883, it's a fictional story about the trailblazers out west during the Land Grant Act, where people went out west and they were trying to carve out the country for themselves, expanding on the frontier. And it highlights the story of the Dutton family. It's the prequel to the TV series Yellowstone. But the point is, you see Yellowstone now, where you have a rancher played by Kevin Costner and his family. They're doing well. They're not broke, but they're still struggling to hold on to what they have. But they go back 100 years, 150 years pretty much, to a time when their ancestors were coming on board and suffered immensely at the hands of white people, Native Americans, other people altogether. So in their case, who would you actually get reparations from? Would it be Native Americans? Would it be the white bandits that came from Ireland or Poland or wherever they came from? I'm just saying here, see the thing I'm talking about? It's really difficult to try and go back and do that and make it fair across the board. You're going to highlight people that have nothing to do with slavery. You're talking about people who have come 3 generations removed from slavery. You're talking about 1940, 1954, 1937. I can maybe see if you're talking about 1851, but you're not. You're talking about years after that when Reconstruction happened. At that point, Reconstruction tried to do what it could do, but then you had something called the Freedmen's Bureau, which was an initiative set up by abolitionists, mostly Republicans, to set the wrongs right to allow the new free slaves to be profitable in this country. And from that, even though it was turned down by the Democrats once they took the House again and the Senate, that was kind of struck down. However, that initiative set forth self-determination and a notion that if you had the tools mentally and physically, you could raise yourself up. It's a concept called free labor, made popularized by Booker T. Washington. And many people came up from slavery and were profitable. But again, after that, more things happened. So at what point in time do you say, okay, at one point in time, Black people were doing pretty good economically, but then they weren't. So what gives there? How do you determine that? The point is, this whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. And like I say here, it's going to cost the taxpayers in San Francisco, right here, an estimate of $559 billion, which is out of control. And to keep this video fairly short, I'm going to just stop it here. But, they never owned slaves in San Francisco. California was a union state. It was a free state. There were no slaves in California. But yet you have this guy here, Mr. Shaman Walton. He says, to answer this question here, where people say, what's your response when people say they never owned slaves? What's the deal? He says, quote, wealth was transferred to generations of people who are ancestors of people who participated in slavery, unquote. But he also doesn't understand the simple concept of capitalism, the concept called the invisible hand. That's the concept of no one gets over. If I have a loaf of bread and I want to sell that loaf of bread because I need money, I sell it to my friend who's hungry. He gives me money for that loaf of bread, which I made myself. I took the grains, I ground it up, I made it, I baked it, I got the yeast, all that stuff, kneaded it, let it rise, baked it. Now I have bread. I have a product from what I've done, either through my garden or through whomever I got it from. I sell him the bread for, let's say, $5. I get money. I can feed my family. He gets bread. He can eat. There's a fair exchange. They agree upon the price. I'm not giving him an ultimatum, buy this bread or else. No, we agree. It's mutual. And that is the invisible hand of economics that allows countries to grow from nothing to insane amount of wealth. We saw that at the Pilgrims the second year, when the first year they were trying to do a commune system. They almost starved to death because they were trying to share alike. but people were lazy and weren't working and they weren't doing their own weight, pulling their own weight. Next thing you know, they were causing everyone to go down because it incentivized people to be lazy. The next year, they said, you know what? We're going to impose capitalism. We're going to give you land. That's your land. You can till it. If you mess up, oh well. But if you do grow on your land, you can sell it and profit. And from there, the United States of America became one of the greatest powers economically in world history from that simple notion of the invisible hand. This guy here doesn't understand economics, doesn't understand that at all, doesn't understand that socialism, which is what he's asking for, does nothing more than make everyone equally poor, because money does not grow on trees. And this whole concept of this reparations assumes that money grows on trees. I know I've said a lot in this video, but hey, it's the first day of Black History Month, and so I thought I'd just do this one because it is so insane. Okay, so what are your thoughts of this particular article about reparations, giving San Francisco residents who've been there long enough, whatever, who are Black, $5 million, and then eventually give them more because, you know what, $5 million is not enough. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. I'd be curious to know what you think. And if you want to see rapper Ice Cube say Black people have not gained anything by voting Democrat, check out this video right here.